Hey everyone, welcome to Four Records. I'm Forrest.
And I'm Karina.
This week we have Mike Magrann from Channel 3 on. He has a new book coming out from DiWulf Publishing House. It's called Tin Knocker. It's about him after the events of Miles Per Gallon, his previous book, and them trying to record a new record. It's a fun book. This is a fun conversation. Here is Mike Magrann's Four Records. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for doing this.
Of course. I was just listening to the last one with Martin Wong, and I was so honored that he chose one of our records for the four.
Well, I was gonna say
Aw.
I am a recent convert to Channel 3 because of
Ah,
Martin Long, which I don't get because I grew up in Buena Park.
that's so
And
funny.
yeah, I was trying to I was talking I think I told you I think I said that in his episode. I don't know why the punk rock kids in my area weren't into Channel 3.
Yeah, it's we were kind of like in between the cracks. I mean, Cerritos physically is right on the border of Orange County and
Mm.
LA County, and I think that in a way that just was a perfect illustration for our band. We were like in between the cracks, not really embraced or denied by the LA punks or the Orange County punks. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
we're
I
a
couldn't
niche.
figure but if you look at old flyers, you guys are there.
Yeah, we did so many crazy shows.
Yeah, and that's so I was like and it was one of those things like I always would look and be like, "Oh, I always made the note to check out Channel 3." And
Right.
then, just 50 things would happen. And then I'm happy Martin was like, "Nah, you need to check out Channel 3." And he added you guys to his list and it's been great listening to you guys and finally getting to hear you guys. Also, I know you have Tin Knocker coming out.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm pleased that you tackled the digital version. I'll be sure to get you the print version out.
Maybe you want to go back and listen to Miles Per Gallon. I really enjoyed I enjoyed your writing style for Tin Knocker.
Well, thanks very much. I thought it'd be more interesting to write it as a novel than, just a straight list of what happened to the band, when and where. So that's why I do list it as a fictionalized type of memoir, because I took liberties with different characters and creating dialogue and all that kind of stuff.
Is Miles Per
But
Gallon a little more nonfiction, if you will?
no, Miles per Gallon is the same vein. It's I mean, we did. It is based on a 1983 tour we took for 3.5 months in the van, and in each city, meeting those bands.
Yeah.
Going to see the big boys in Texas and hanging out with Danzig in New Jersey and the Chicago bands, and so real events and real people. But then I would invent dialogue and different characters as well. So because I think our band is not some legendary, story and all that. We were just another one of the B-level bands, but the story wasn't that we created anything earth shaking. It's just that we were there at a certain point of history, and my friendship with Kim, my childhood friend, was the one constant in it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I maybe want to immediately go read Miles Per Gallon. So I'm gonna,
Oh, I
um,
appreciate it.
yeah, working on trying to. I'm gonna pick up a copy from DeWolf. When you're going through these the prompt for the podcast, what was your process in selecting these records?
Very interesting concept there, and I like the idea of different times of your life. And
Mhm.
so I just thought of where I was at each junction. You know,
Mm.
um, your formative years of your first record. Your teen years when you really find the music that speaks to you, and then
Mm.
later on the music that inspired us to create our own music. And then the last record, the Beautiful South, the kind of weird one, because that's a early 90s record, but I find myself constantly listening to it because it kind of has become the soundtrack to my travels and background. I always put it on whenever I get on a plane. I put on my noise canceling headphones. I put on the Beautiful South record for some reason, and not so much that the songs speak to anything specific in what I'm doing. It just always creates a backdrop for what I'm experiencing.
Is it
So
like a comfort thing for you, do you think?
maybe something like that, but it kind of comes full circle to the way music was perceived when I was a kid. You know, back then they had those giant console stereos, and you just see your mom and dad's record collections. You know, after a cocktail party, they'd be strewn all over the floor, and they'd have like the swinging sounds, Dean Martin and Sammy and all that. And it's when music had a different sort of Burt Bacharach-ish feel and all that. And that's almost what the Beautiful South became in later life to me. It's kind of like the background, easy listening. Music becomes something that is not incendiary or inspiring. All that it almost becomes that background to your life.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so your first record was Meet the Beatles.
Yeah. And
yeah, I had to ask you because I grew up with the English ones. By the time I got to the Beatles was when they had the regular releases. They didn't have those American ones.
Yeah, I have no idea the actual copy. All I can remember is, like I said, those days you're flipping through your parents' record collection, and it's the usual, Eartha Kitt and Rat Pack stuff. It's like, what is this? And I was of the age where I can actually remember the Ed Sullivan Show in black and white. I don't know if I saw that earth-shaking first appearance where, I mean, every music documentary in the world, it's always like, I saw them and it changed my life. But I was a bit too young for it to inspire me to become a musician at that point. But I do remember you'd look at that and you'd see that striking black and white cover with those haircuts, and there's just something immediately cool about that record. And of course, I was the youngest of 5 kids, and my older sisters and brothers, they would play that record, and there was just something about it, the whole packaging, the whole pop sensibility, the way it all came together, that was just a generational shift. And it's funny when I go back and I listen to Beatles, I always gravitate to those early songs. I seem to prefer those to the later experimental, Revolver into Sergeant Pepper's things. I just there were so many British Invasion cheesy pop bands around there, but somehow they transcended that, and you knew even back then that they were real songwriters, and the harmonies and all that, just timeless.
Yep. No, I completely agree. I'm a massive Beatles fans to the dismay of my parents. They weren't big Beatles fans, but I was. I feel like it was one of those bands that, again, I say this often, but I'm also on a very different spectrum of my parents. They may have shown me In Excess and AC/DC and stuff, but the Beatles, that was fine. And I think I actually didn't know until a few years ago that the Beatles had made American versions of the English albums either. So it was because and I didn't know it was called Meet the Beatles in America. So I was like, which one is Meet the Beatles? Is that
I started listening to With the Beatles, and I'm all
with the
like,
Beatles? Yeah.
I don't think this is right. And then I looked it up and I found on Spotify. That's why I had to send Karina a playlist, and I'm like, go off of this one because you're gonna look at With the Beatles and you're gonna be wrong.
They weren't different versions of the songs, right? They were just
No, same
repackaged
songs, just
for
packaged
Capitol,
differently. Yeah.
Right.
It's like a combination of With the Beatles and Please Please Me, and they just kind of mashed them together. And I I don't know if it's because I grew up, like I said, on the regular British releases, but I didn't like how these were, how it was ordered. And I love the Beatles. My dad's a big Beatles fan. It
Right.
imprinted on me. It's imprinted on my son. I think if your last name is Gaddis and you're a male, you're just automatically in for the Beatles, like 100%.
Well, can I ask how old you guys are?
I am 43.
Okay,
I am
Katrina.
34.
Ah, see, so I'm 65 now. So if you can imagine being born in 1960, I was there, and I can remember that
Mm.
fanaticism. I mean, I remember the Saturday morning cartoons and the
Yeah.
commercials for toys and all that. And
Oh yeah.
I mean, I remember, begging my mom for those Cuban heel boots when I was in, uh, second grade. Although by then once they started growing mustaches and all that, it was kind of dismaying for kids. It's like, what happened to our little buddies? But that's very interesting that even at your guys' younger generation, that it still resonates.
Yeah, I mean, I've been learning Beatles songs since I can pick up, since I played here and there, and I'll pick up my bass and I'll play along the Beatles songs. I
Yeah.
For a minute I had a program that would tab it out on my phone, and if I didn't want to learn it right away, like I would just sit and kind of follow along with the tab
Mm.
as it streams on my TV, and I would just sit there, and I've heard the songs enough times to where I know where to hit.
Right.
Mm.
And I that was the Beatles and the Clash. Those are the two bands that I do that with.
Ah,
And
there you go.
they're just ingrained into me.
Ingrained is a good word. It's funny because my wife and I went on a cruise in Mexico last summer, and there was a Beatles tribute band on the board.
Oh,
And
nice.
these
Nice.
guys are great, but those harmonies and those notes so well in you when it's just a little off. It's like, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. Because I mean, those songs are just like you said, just ingrain your DNA, that exact version that you know.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, how did I discover Beatles? I think I want to say it was my
Mhm.
dad's friend Elfie. Dad, if you're listening, I'm mentioning him. He introduced me to Buddy Holly too,
Ah,
and yeah, and a lot more Beatles. And he was like, he had a insane music repertoire, but he sadly passed away. But I would just remember like anytime I would be at his place with him and his wife, he'd just be like, Karina, I'm gonna sit you down, I'm gonna introduce you to this. You won't like it now, but later in life you're gonna thank me. And now I'm like, anytime I had to clean or anything, it's just like automatically the Beatles. The Beatles
that's
are
great.
on, the sun is shining, and it might be raining outside, but inside it's shining.
Ah, what a great friend to have to open you up to those
Yeah.
kind of songs.
My dad has a lot of weird friends, but I think they all benefited along the way, like with football and music and stuff like that, things that my dad wouldn't have really been able to give me. But I also ended up like in my ninth grade, we had a massive exam because in Denmark it's funny. You go from like kindergarten class into the ninth grade, and then you're done with, I want to say it's like middle school, and you have a massive exam and everything, and you have to write a big exams project. So I ended up writing about music in the 60s for it. And the
Huh?
Beatles and the Who and Woodstock was three touch points. My sensei was really liked me there. He didn't like me when I was done because then we had nothing to talk about anymore.
That's great.
Yeah, like I said, it was weird hearing this version of those songs in that order.
Yeah.
I knew these American versions existed, but I never went out to them because I got to that point where the only reason why the Beatles weren't my 0 to 10 also was because I grew up with Breakfast with the Beatles and I listened to everything. By the time I couldn't pinpoint like what album would have been the album for me because it was everything.
Right. Yeah, and as you grow old, you move on from those those early ones, and then you get into Revolver, then you get into, you know,
Nope.
Sergeant Pepper's and all that, and then you know, then you get older and you come back to the early stuff. It's almost like following Elvis's career, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Awesome.
been Beatles for sale all the way.
Yeah.
Is that yours, Karina? 'Cause that's
Yeah,
mine.
that's my all-time favorite. It's
That is
I go on record. I've told everybody, Beatles for Sale, that's my favorite Beatles album. If you ever want to give me the perfect gift, nobody's gotten it yet, which amazes me. And everybody knows this. If you want to get me the perfect gift, Beatles for Sale. That's it.
Now you can get 5 copies for
Yeah.
Christmas.
And I hope so.
All right. So your teen record was Starz Violation.
Have you ever heard of this one?
I had not. I didn't even know who, I didn't. I was like Starz is a band and not a movie station,
Isn't that
movie
crazy?
channel.
Yeah. So, you know, famously, I met my my musical partner Kim Gardner in 2nd grade, and we grew up. Cerritos was a brand new suburban city that was put on top of these cow pastures and all of that, and along with that, all these brand new families would come in there. Tons of kids back then, and we met each other. We grew up together amidst the, you know, mid 70s huge stadium concert acts and all that. And by the time we got into high school, we'd be going to Anaheim Stadium and seeing Aerosmith and Alice Cooper, $5 general admission tickets, you know, for these all-day festivals and all that. And you know, of course, we just love Aerosmith. We love Kiss, you know, all that bombastic stuff. And um, we we saw this band Starz that was, you know, managed by the same Kiss company. They were trying to get in the same trajectory. And it's funny because they were a band that never quite made it and have become like just a footnote. But I think it almost kind of foreshadows our love for the underdog bands and looking for something unique, which of course always brings is always the footstone for punk rockers. You know, is like,
Yeah.
you know, I listened to these guys before you were, that kind of thing. And you know, they were just a cheesy pop rock band, you know, great musicians, you know, wonderful pop melody songs that we just loved, our little group in high school that people just didn't know about. And I always think about that band to this day.
It was, yeah, it was interesting, and you can also hear. It made me wonder if the replacements were a fan at some point too,
Yeah.
because they're
They really have a niche following amongst very hip musicians. You know, you'll see people wearing that Star shirt,
Mm.
and it's like seeing somebody from across the room is like, oh, you're one of us too, huh?
Nice. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a good listen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
Subway Terra is definitely a banger. That goes
Well, it's
hard.
I said the Violation record, right? And
yeah.
that is actually a concept record about some, you know, it's very close to 2112, Rush's thing, because this guy is in a thrift shop and he finds a copy of Walk This Way, Aerosmith record, and he plays it and turns him into a street thug, and then they take him and they lobotomize him or something like that. And I thought, as a story, the concept held up better than you know, Rush's Ayn Rand ripoff or whatever. But I think this was their only foray into like a concept record, which was a big thing back in the '70s. And they went on to make some other pop records, and kind of at the end almost got a little new wavy punk with a record called X-Ray Specs or something. But you know, now you'll just see them kind of on the fair circuit here and there, still playing with bands like Angel and Gods, and you know, kind of that B level band, you know, that found an intense small following. And
Yeah.
oddly enough, I think that's kind of where we find ourselves in Channel 3 as well.
Yeah.
Was this an, oh,
I
good.
love that. Oh no, I just wanted to say I actually love that because I didn't know about them, and it's funny that Forrest said that he thought it was he went like, oh, there is something a band called Starz that's on the TV channel. I went like directly to like some Brit pop band that I hadn't heard of. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting, and I just started listening, and then kicking off with Cherry Bomb. I was like, okay, yeah, this is my kind of music. This is the stuff
Yeah,
I
I mean,
listen to.
great pop songs, and when
So
we were going to
good.
those big concerts, we naturally started going to smaller clubs and all that. And
Mm.
Van Halen, famously, they were a backyard party band around here when we were in high school, and we'd go see them play at warehouse parties, and then go to Whiskey A Go Go our first time there, and I remember the first time we saw Cheap Trick, they were opening for the Runaways at the Santa Monica Civic, and we saw them and we're like, oh my God. Cheap Trick, they were just so weird. And we had no idea. We thought they had to be a European band. And they played the Whiskey the next night, and we were, I think, 16 years old, and we went to the Whiskey. We stayed for 2 shows, and we got in so much trouble, but we were there when there was 50 people in the audience, and to this day, I mean, Cheap Trick's another one of those bands I just love.
Was,
Same.
oh, was this an album that you looked for, or did it find you?
You know what? I guess I don't know. I think we must have just caught Stars on one of those mega bills, opening for Rick Derringer, Leonard Skinner, whatever. And we saw them, and like I said, I'm always a sucker for the pop song, the melodic hook, and all that. And they really stood above the other bands as writing songs that the girls would like. And so I think we went down to the record store and found the first 8-track or whatever of those things, and put in the old van, and that was it. We bought every record after that, and we'd go see them play. They did support Aerosmith quite a lot back then, so we'd had to go see Aerosmith every time we'd see them play. And then after that, they'd come around on the club circuit and play just local clubs for a couple hundred people. And always a little heartbreaking when you see your musical bands come down to a club level. But then again, for a fan, it's great because you'd actually, we have guitar picks that they would throw out, and we got a couple autographs and all that kind of thing.
Nice. Did
Yeah.
it point you in a direction at all, like musically, or?
A lot of people have accused Stars of being our one of our blatant ripoffs, but I don't think we could ever achieve like that. That '70s rock and roll musicianship they had. If anything, it probably informed nice sweet hooks, melody, and keep the song short type of thing.
Yeah. That was the thing I noticed for it being a 70s band is that they weren't overblown like
Yeah.
big song. I mean, they got a big sound, but they didn't. Their track time wasn't too long.
Yeah, I think that's that whole Jack Douglas production, Bill Aucoin management. They were kind of being groomed to be in the Kiss vein as a
Mm.
entertainment group. Not to get too heavy on the jams or too scary on the vocals. So it was a sign of the times.
Yeah, it did feel very, very Kiss without the pageantry a
Yeah,
bit.
right. Yeah.
But I dug it. Like I'm not. You can always hear that little, and you can always hear that little bit of like Southern rock in that 70s. Like you don't realize how much that Southern rock is there until you like hear like you said, like kind of a band that wasn't as big. Um,
Yeah.
that that when you until you kind of fan out, to hear things that weren't on the radio as much.
Yeah,
Mm.
and plus they had that double guitar and did those harmonies like Thin Lizzy style, and that really was a big thing when we started a band. It's like we have to have two guitars.
Mhm.
Every band we loved had the two guitar players.
Was Channel 3 when I've listened to a bunch of it in the last couple like in the last months as I talked to Martin. When you guys first started, and maybe this will lead into what your Clash record right here. Were you guys kind of closer to Starz when you started playing, or was the Clash the band that made you like let's do this?
You know what? To to that degree, I'd say, one of the biggest cliches is, we heard the Ramones and we knew we could do that. And I would have to say the
Mm.
Ramones were probably the the real inspiration to start a band because growing up, from 15 years old on, Kim and I took guitar lessons together at the community college and noodle around the guitar. But when you're listening to Led Zeppelin, Stars or Van Halen, it's like you can't even dream of playing guitar like that.
Hmm.
But we heard the Ramones, and it's like, hey, let me show you how to play Blitzkrieg Bop. And it's like, oh, we got that in 5 minutes. And next
Yeah.
thing you know, it's like, we borrowed electric guitars from my older brother, and we could play that song start to finish. We're like, hey, let's get a drummer, let's start a band. So I'd really have to say the Ramones were the ones that would start us playing, but the Clash were always our blueprint for,
Mhm.
the lineup of the band. I'm going to be guitar player, singer. We're going to have four guys, and the songs have to always have hooks, regardless of how serious the lyric content's going to be. It has to be a rock and roll song first. So, the Clash has always been our imprint of the band, and a lot of people call us out on that, but we're not ashamed. We proudly wear that.
No, it's funny that people become such purists in that degree because if they think about it, all music is inspired from someone or something. Like
Sure.
nothing, and I mean, it's fine that you have a blueprint. Everyone needs a blueprint to set themselves out with. The fact is, because I did catch a bit of your music earlier, you're actually on my list for my running session tomorrow. So
Ah,
I didn't yeah, I don't I have an album and I run or a band and I run. Um, but I must say I really like the sound because it reminded me of the Oi period in the UK back in the 70s, which I
right.
don't mind. I love that because again, I love football and stuff like that. It just brings back really fond memories.
We were fortunate enough through the dealings of Robbie Fields, the head of
Mm,
Poshmark Records,
Yeah.
to have our records released on No Future, which was the huge UK oi hardcore record label. And for
yeah.
years, people always thought that we were an English band because we had records released on No Future. So, I think our sound always did tend to be more English than the typical SoCal hardcore of the time,
Mm.
which probably contributed in us not being quite as popular as our pals in the adolescence and well of Agent Orange. But it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, I
It
was gonna
did.
say because you guys don't really embrace the surf like the Adolescents and Agent Orange did.
Yeah, we always just loved that early English sound. I mean, 999, that was one of our favorite bands. And again, I think it was because we tended to go for those underground bands that weren't the top tier. And 999, besides their hit Homicide, which was huge back then. I mean, they had radio airplay during the day on K Rock, and
Mhm.
they would come around and sell at the Santa Monica Civic at 3,000 seats. But as time goes on, they haven't toured as extensively as like GBH or Coxbar, and a lot of people now
Mm.
like don't even know who they are, and they continue to play, and we're proud to say they've become good friends of ours. But 999 is another band. Just I put them on par with the Buzzcocks as terms of songcraft and melody, and so we really were informed by bands like that, The Clash, The Jam, 999, and less so than our contemporaries over here.
And the record, I don't think we said it. Your 20s record is The Clash's London Calling.
Yeah, I mean, that's shooting fish in a barrel, man. What can you say?
Yeah.
It remains probably, if you went and said, what's your favorite record of all time? I'd say it's got to be London Calling,
Mm.
I'd put it up there as, the perfect record, really. And it just blew your mind when you first put it on. First of all, it was a double record. It's like, what is a double record?
Mhm.
I think isn't it 18 songs and one song hidden
Yes.
or something like that? Yeah.
Train in Vain's a
And
hidden one.
yeah. And it just showed what was possible for a band in terms of evolution and what you could do from your very beginnings. And I think that informed us each time, is try to slow it down a little and still keep the energy, try to expand your lyrical content, um, reach out, branch out. Unfortunately, when we branched out, we kind of went in more of a glam direction in the 80s, which a lot of punk rock bands did, to sometimes hilarious result. It's not like we went into reggae or dub or anything like that. We kind of took a shot at being rock stars, which didn't quite work. But the Clash just kind of showed that you aren't limited by something called punk rock, and they became a world class rock and roll band. You know,
How many genres does that album hit in, the 50 minutes that it's
it's
everything?
crazy. Yeah. And it was so funny to see Martin's interview, and he called London Calling as well. And I
Yeah.
imagine it pops up a lot on this
This is out. That was going to
podcast.
be actually, this is the first album that's been the repeat.
Oh, really? How
Yeah.
funny.
We've
Well,
done
good
about
taste on me and Martin.
we've done about 23. I think you're number 23 or 24, and this is the first, actually, and in general, first repeat album we've had.
How funny. It's funny because Martin was talking about that Bruce Springsteen concert as well. And I was there that same night. And it just, I mean, the opening chords, tumbling down chords of Clampdown, like, oh shit, he's doing it. And, I'm no Bruce
Mm.
fanatic. It was just kind of like, hey, man, there's some nosebleed seats left. My wife and I said, let's go to the forum and we'll go see. And he started off that show just ferocious, as ferocious as any punk rocker. And I was standing on my seat saying, this is it. Why aren't the punk rockers standing up in mass and protesting the nonsense we're going on right now? I mean,
Mm.
back in the early 80s, all we were fueled by was this uninformed rage against Reagan.
Hmm.
And you look back then, it's almost charming, the uh, the underground black helicopter shenanigans of the party back then. This blatant disregard for anything decent right now, and people are just kind of like surrendered, resigned to it. And it was Bruce Springsteen of all people that was the most punk rock motherfucker that stood up, and he was just raging that night. And then he threw that clamp down on it, and it was just perfect moment. The most punk rock moment I've seen this year.
I don't get how the kids aren't doing it. Like, I know Fishbone does it. Their last album was a full-on
Mm,
protest album. Um, Green
Mm.
Day, for as much as everybody makes fun of Green Day does it somewhat,
right.
but like,
And we were always like, we were always more, I always say, the politics of the heart and the groin as a band. We tended to be more like the Replacements, like the funny drunks in the corner. But when Trump went into his first term, there was nothing else to do, and we put out our record, put him up on TKO, and it was
Mm.
and remains like our protest record. It was like, all right, let's rise up. And we looked around and like it's like nobody else knows what the fuck was going on. And we made some incendiary videos and all that, and it was amazing the backlash we would get online. It's like, all right, sheep, like way to go, jump on the bandwagon. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
How can you not protest this stuff? If you've got the microphone and guitar, how can it not,
Yeah,
infect what you're talking about right then?
yeah. I think I saw Jack from TSOL had put something up where people were pushing back on him, and he goes, "Where the fuck have you been for the last 40 years? Like, where the
Yeah.
fuck have you been for the last
Yeah.
35, 40 years to where you don't get that we're pushing back on this for, we've always pushed back on this."
Yeah. Famously, our first EP that came out in 1981 had a song called Manzanar, and that's a Japanese relocation camp. My
Yeah.
mother's Japanese, and all of her family. I mean, you imagine as a teenager,